and YouTube. So just give me a second. Come on in, say hi. Let me know that you can hear me okay. Tell me where you're from, and I'll just make sure everything's recording on here so we don't lose anything. Got it? All right. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kathleen Jasper with NavaEd. I'm really excited to be here with you today. We are going through the School Leaders Licensure Assessment today, the SLLA 6990. And this webinar is going to be great for you if you're studying for any leadership exam, including the FELE. And if you're a teacher who's just checking things out, seeing if maybe you want to be an educational leader or become an assistant principal, this is a great course for you as well. So some of you signed up through, the registration form. Some of you are just on live on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. So that's great. We'll have all the links and everything you need either in an email or in the post or wherever it needs to go. So don't worry about that. You should have, if you've registered, you should have received the handouts, the study guide that goes with the webinar today. Don't worry if you didn't have a chance to print them out. We will totally use them on the screen, so don't worry. The other thing that we will be doing is going through test questions, and I have a presentation here I'll be writing on the screen and all of that. Use the chat to talk to one another, encourage each other. Use the chat to talk to me if you'd like, but we have about 500 people on various sites watching this webinar, which is fantastic. But getting to every question may be difficult. So if you have a question that you really want us to answer, you can email us or get us on direct message on Facebook, and we will do our very best to get back to you. If you email us, we will get back to you. We always get back to you if you email us. But in the chat, it might be hard for me to see all that. But we do have NavaEd team members online and in the chat if you need help. Now, technical issues, you're going to have to troubleshoot those on your own. I can't address those in the chat, so the chat's really not the best place to talk about sound issues or video issues, but I am recording everything, so no matter what happens, if we go down, then we will be fine because I have it all recorded. Don't worry, I've learned my lesson before where things go down and I didn't have it recorded, but we are recording everything. Looks like we've got some people here for FELE and SLLA. Looks like we've got people from Virginia, Florida, Memphis, Tennessee. This is awesome, you guys. Louisiana, New Jersey. Fantastic. We started in Florida, just a quick background, and then we're going to get right into it because I hate it when I go on a webinar and someone tries to sell me something or tell me too much about themselves. But we are mainly from Florida. That's where we started. And I started with the FELE, and we've helped thousands pass the FELE. And then I've been really immersed in the SLLA and looking at that test, and I realized I can do the SLLA too. So let me do some webinars for that. And I'm excited to see so many people from all over the country here. And I'm excited to see my Florida people here with us. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it with us. And without further ado, I'm just going to get right into it. My name is Kathleen Jasper. I'm the CEO of NavaEd. I'm a former teacher. I went through the alternative certification process, just like many of you have. I had to take the test and all of that. I got a degree in English, didn't plan on becoming an educator because that was not cool. I was not going to become an educator, but ended up trying it and loving it and went through the whole process, got certified. Then I had the opportunity to go downtown in curriculum. I was working on my second master's degree, went downtown to work in curriculum, and that's where I learned a lot about these exams. Testing companies came in to train us on how to use blueprints, how to use test specifications, how to analyze test questions, how to align assessment items to blueprints and things like that, because we were building assessments for the entire district. And it was a really cool job. If you ever have a chance to go downtown to the downtown office and work and build curriculum and all that, it's a really fun job. You learn a lot and you get a lot done when there are no kids, around. So that was a really good job. And then I got my master's in ed leadership or specialist in ed leadership. Then I went and became an assistant principal at my high school that I started teaching in and did that for a few years, got my doctorate, and then left and started NavaEd. So I am credentialed. I do have the expertise to teach you this today. I'm not just some random person deciding to sell you something. And so that's my background. Really excited to be here with you. Hoping there are some teachers on the fence about leadership here today. Hoping we can inspire you and bring you along and get you in on the education leadership train, because it's a really great place to be. And it leads to all sorts of things like the job I have now, which is teaching all of you. So I'm excited. Welcome, everyone. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I am going to be working right from my, hopefully you can see this. Sorry, I don't mean to be all crazy, swooshing through. Let me know in the chat that you can see my screen. It should say School Leaders Licensure. I always want to make sure people can hear me and see me and see the thing. So it looks like all of you can see my presentation. Perfect. All right, let's go. So this is going to be for the School Leaders Licensure Exam or Assessment, the SLLA 690. Quick little background, if you're taking the 6011 or the FELI, this is going to align, trust me. The questions are very similar, the content is similar, and the skills they're assessing are the same. So just follow along with us here. I'll refer to the FELI a little bit. I'll tell you which subtest it goes with and all of that. But the focus will be today on the SLLA. This is a new assessment, relatively new. It used to be the 6011, I'm sorry. And that's the old test. So I'll just write up here. The old was 6011. They're still using it in some states, but most states have switched to the 6990. And all that means is that the leadership standards changed, or they decided to use a new set of leadership standards. So they changed the exam. But I've looked at both specs, both blueprints, they're very much aligned. So if you're still taking the 6011, don't worry about it. But most states have switched to the 6990. Sorry, there's a lot of numbers we're talking about here. And my name is Kathleen Jasper, and we'll move forward. So this is the blueprint of the SLLA 6990. You can see I've got, like, for my visual people here, I've got a little pie chart, but for the most part, I'd like you to pay attention to this particular table here. So there are 7 sections of the exam. The last section, section 7, is the written portion of the exam. We're going to talk about it. Don't worry. I was, for this webinar, just going to go over instructional leadership, but I know so many of you are taking this exam pretty quickly. We are going to have follow-up webinars, but some of you need this information right away. So I decided it is going to be heavy on the instructional leadership portion, but we're going to hit every single content area, because looking at the responses that I got, I figured that would be a better way to differentiate my instruction and make sure I hit the places where you guys need. But please notice that the majority of the test, about 61%, comes from these top 3 categories here. So you want to make sure that, you know, you are thinking about those particular categories a lot. Now, you still want to know these other ones. You still want to be looking at ethical leadership and organizational leadership and community engagement. They're all important, but you will notice that on these 3 content areas of the exam, the strategic leadership, instructional leadership, and climate and cultural leadership, the concepts in those content categories are present throughout the entire exam. You will see instructional leadership type questions in the organizational leadership, in the ethical leadership, because there are concepts that surround instructional leadership that are going to be applicable for all sections of the exam. So just pay attention to that when we move forward. And I'll call your attention to it to make more sense. Now, we get a lot of questions about what's a passing score. Every state is different, but for the most part on the new 6990, it's a 151-ish, 153-ish. So it all just depends on, you know, what state you are in. So check your state. I am not in the business of communicating state requirements. And the reason being is because every state is different and they change constantly. And you know that, being educators. So what I do is I prepare you for the exam. I do know the scores needed for the most part, and I do know what states are looking for, but I try not to communicate state information because it's ever changing, and we're online, and somebody could look at this 3 months from now and watch it and go with something I said that's outdated. So for the most part, for 6990, most states are requiring a 151. I would shoot for a 75 to 80% correct on the multiple choice. Now, the multiple choice, they call it selected response, but that's just a churched up word for multiple choice. There are 120 multiple choice questions. And then there are 4 constructed response questions. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And this is a combined score. So let me just show you something here. You're going to do 120 multiple choice questions, and then you're going to do 4 constructed responses. So it's 4 essays, essentially. Now they're short. You don't need to be taking 20 hours on each essay. These are short, extended responses. It's not a full-on like essay test, right? But they are assessing your ability to communicate in your writing, certain things based on the data. And we are going to go through that today. But you have 4 of them, and they're worth anywhere from 0 to 3 points. And so you get a total of 12 possible extra points that can go towards this score. It's a combined score. On the Feely, it's a separate score. For the SLLA, it's a combined score. So that's kind of good news, because then you can leverage, your multiple choice. If you do really well on the multiple choice, you can do a little bit not so well on the writing. But if you do really well on the writing, you can miss a few more on the multiple choice. So either way, I'm going to show you how to attack this constructed response, and I'm going to show you how to attack the multiple choice. So it's going to be fine. Okay. So discuss in the chat. If you know more about it, if you've taken the test before, discuss in the comments and in the chat with your fellows. I am, like I said, we started with Feely. I am still digging into this exam and really analyzing, the psychometrics of it, which takes a little bit of time. But this is what I have found to be most tried and true. Now, if you have a different experience, go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll take a look at that as well. Now, when I talk about the any assessment, I always talk about good words and phrases you should be looking for in the answer choices. Now, these good words and phrases come from the test specifications. Now, I hope maybe I didn't pull up my test specifications. Hang on one second, please hold. Let's do a new window here. Let me go to my test specifications. So if you just Google SLLA study companion, I should have done this before we started. You will see this school leader licensure series, or school leadership series, here on ETS. And all you have to do is select 6990, and you click the study companion. Now, I'd say this to everybody all the time. I have fancy prep programs. I got fancy books. I have fancy webinars. I have fancy ways of talking to you about all this. But this document is the most important document that you can possibly look at. This is what governs the assessment. It is the blueprint. So you have the blueprint here, and then you have the test specifications here. Now we're going to go through the test specification, and I've cut pieces of this out and put it in my presentation so I don't have to keep scrolling on you. So don't worry about that. But the words and the language in this document are the words and the language that are going to be present in the correct answer choices on the exam. Okay. So please pay attention to this document. Like I said before, Pearson and testing companies came down and trained us curriculum people on how to write test questions. Well, they trained us on these blueprints as well. Let me just zoom in a little bit. They trained us on how to write these. They trained us on how to use these to align instruction, to align items. This is actually a part of the test, understanding how teacher-made assessments should be aligned to the state assessments and to the state standards. That's what this is right here. So you've got to pay attention to this document. It is free. It's here. They've got practice test questions in it. If you're studying for the Feely, and I've said this before, this document is better than the Pearson document. Just going to say it. I said it. Pearson. ETS builds a better blueprint. I am a blueprint expert. Yep, I said it. I read blueprints all day long. And this one is very, very, very thorough. It's a tremendous resource. I recommend you looking through it. We are going to reference it today. It drives my instructional practice, and it drives how I write the books and the guides and everything else. Okay, this is it. Okay, that's the ticket. All right, back to my presentation here. Okay, so let me just check in with you guys, make sure everybody is good to go. All right, looks like you're all good. All right, just checking in, making sure we're still connected. Okay, so you should see my good words and phrases. Now, these good words and phrases come from the test specifications that we just looked at. Now, these are also things you should be doing as an educational leader. It's not just about the test, but it's about becoming an educational leader. Now, these are pie in the sky situations. We know if you're already in your internship, if you're already in your, if you're already working as a dean or an AP, you know that you can't always do this all the time because you got kids doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You got teachers doing crazy stuff. You've got, a fire alarms going off. You've got things going on during the day. But in an ideal world where you had all the money in the world, the support from the district, you had parent support, teacher support, all of it, this is what you would do. Okay. So let's take a look at good words and phrases. And we want to be looking for these in the answer choices when we're answering questions on this exam. Of course, most important, and you will see it on every single content category, using data to make decisions. This is the first thing you do. Always look at the data first. I'm going to show you examples where all 4 answer choices look like good answers on this test, but there's one that talks about referencing data before you make a decision. And that's the right answer because that's what should be driving you. You can't just be going on your gut. You can't always be going on, oh, well, I feel like this might be the way to go. It's not a feelings factory. Okay. It's school. Mine is a business. I use data to drive my instructional decisions. So it's not a feelings factory. Hate to be mean, but it's not. You got to look at the data and figure out what's going on. The other thing is collaborative leadership. You're looking at this data with teachers. Together, you're making decisions. Okay. It's not you running the show all the time. You want to make sure that you are working with teachers collaboratively, using their expertise. There's expertise in the building that goes beyond you as a leader. You got to bring them in. Alignment to the standards, of course, this is a standardized assessment. You are preparing students to take standardized assessments. You're preparing teachers to prepare students to take standardized assessments. You see how that goes. And all of that aligns back to your particular state standards. And that is going to be a driving force in how you govern the school, how you lead the school. Of course, same thing, alignment to school goals, but those goals are, everything is working together here. The other thing I want to talk about too is resilience, and that has a lot to do with data analysis. You may see questions on leadership resiliency or resilience leadership. And basically what this means is that in the face of complete and utter failure, which is going to be a big part of your life as an instructional leader, as an educational leader, you have angry parents in the office. You got maybe your test scores aren't doing real well. The football game got rained out. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and you're getting hammered. Your resiliency is the thing that's going to keep you going, and that's what makes a leader. So those will be questions like, where something failed, something didn't work, something became just a total failure. What did you do? Well, you reevaluated the data, came up with another plan and kept going. So make sure you pay attention to that. Resiliency has to do with failure and how you overcome failure. And I will tell you, a lot of districts, when they're hiring assistant principals now, they will go more towards resiliency questions more so than like, what do you know questions, because they know you can regurgitate all this good language like we're going to do on this test. But what do you do when all that fails? How do you continue building a collaborative environment in your school when it's not working? So resiliency, and that's part of being a leader. It's about failure on a daily basis. Succession management has a lot to do with resiliency. This has to do with building capacity as well. This is about building other leaders in your school, bringing people along, finding that leadership skill and saying, hey, you'd make a great assistant principal. Have you thought about doing X, Y, and Z? Do you want to help me with my discipline referrals? Yeah, that's what I would do. You want to be an assistant principal? Come help me with my discipline referrals. But that is a way to build capacity and bring people along. The other thing we want to be focused on for sure is student achievement. Everything should be driving student achievement. And I know that sounds obvious, but when you're in the midst of a problem on this exam, sometimes that gets lost. So rigor and relevance, oh, the two words that are pervasive in education today. I don't know if people really know what they mean, but they are there. You want to be moving towards a more rigorous, a more critical thinking curriculum in your school. You want to help teachers, provide a more higher order thinking situation in their classrooms. That takes training, that takes time. Also relevance, things need to be real world. We're moving now to online learning and things like that, and we've got to make it relevant to students' lives. The term ongoing is a good term as well. As we're collecting data, as we're working towards school standards, as we're building rigorous and relevant curriculum, we are continuing to improve the process. I did this twice, and that's okay. Maybe that was for a reason, because ongoing continuous improvement is a huge part of your job. Don't get complacent, because you gotta be. Don't be too discouraged, because you gotta see, or gotta, whatever it is, you've got to keep going and move forward. You also want to close the achievement gap. That's going to be a big piece of this exam. Where can you close the gap? And what that means is you're going to have students in different subgroups, from different ethnicities, from different socioeconomic status, from different walks of life, right? From at-risk students to ESE students to ELL students. How do you close that gap? Meaning, how do you get those students to achieve at the same levels that the students who are high achieving are at? Bringing those kids up, closing that gap. It's a buzz term. It's been used since the accountability movement. Make sure you're aware of how to do it, because it's an important part of your job. High expectations for all students, no matter where they're from, no matter what scores they're getting, whether they're your AP honors students or your students who are working towards a special diploma. Every student can be held to high expectations, and you need to make sure that's happening in your building. Also, being culturally responsive is a big piece of this exam. You've got to make sure that you're paying attention to culture in your school, and also training your teachers to be more culturally responsive. We'll talk more about that. And then we get into the last portion of the exam, which has to do with more of the laws and governing of the school, making sure that students are having the ability to exercise their rights. Students have rights. And you can't violate them, and you got to do your best not to violate them. And sometimes you violate student rights without even knowing it, because you're in the moment and you're trying to keep people safe and things like that. So due process is a good word on this exam, and you want to be on the lookout for that. Due process means a lot of things. I actually have a test question that I want to talk about in here. So we'll talk more about that. Then we have equity. Everything you do should be centered around equity, giving each student the same type of opportunity, or the same opportunity to succeed. We want to pay attention to stakeholders. That means the school community, anybody who has a stake in the school. So that's parents, that's teachers, that's your custodial staff, that's your office staff, that's the business leader down the road. It's Target, if Target's in your neighborhood. It's everybody. So making sure you're making those connections. And then finally, thinking of diversity as an asset. What I like to say, no deficit thinking. Meaning, stay away from words like, well, our kids, they're from here and they can't do that. And our kids, well, they don't have the same opportunities. And our kids are poor, or our kids are this, or our kids are that. It doesn't matter who your kids are. No deficit thinking. Diversity is an asset. We can move every kid. All means all. All means all. So keep that in mind when you're looking for answers on the exam. And we'll get right into strategic leadership. Hopefully you guys are doing okay, talking to each other in the chat, letting people know how things work in your school maybe, or how things go in your school. Keep it positive. Let's keep it positive, people. Let's not get negative in the chat. Let's stay with the positive stuff that happens. All right, so strategic leadership is the first content category of your exam. It is all about those vision and goals. So here's how the presentation is going to go. You notice here that I have a piece of the study companion. This is how it's going to work. And then next to the study companion, I have a test question. I feel that this is the most effective way to teach people this content in context, right? In a real world setting. I can talk all day about mission and goals and all that, but if I don't reference a test question, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to apply it to the exam. But I also want you to think about being a leader in the schools as well. And this will help you become a better leader. Now, strategic leadership, you can see section A here, and this isn't the whole thing. We're just breaking pieces of the test apart. This has to do with mission, vision, goals, and core values of the school. And then you have these, and let's just zoom in a little bit. Then you have the test specs here. So you have understands how to develop an educational mission, understands how to analyze multiple sources of data, because how are you going to build a mission and a vision without looking at the data first? First. Selects appropriate school goals that are aligned. There are those words again. Evaluates the current mission and vision and sees if those goals are appropriate. Maybe it's a question about a new leader coming into the school and you have to fix the vision or mission or something like that. You got to look and see what's wrong with the old one or the current one. Then you have understands how to implement a vision and goals that reflect core values. And then look at this, with challenging and measurable expectations. Well, how do you measure expectations? You look at the data to see what happens. Now, the data could be qualitative data. It could be student surveys, teacher surveys, more of feelings type stuff. Or it could be quantitative data where you're looking at test scores and benchmark assessments. Or it should be a little bit of both, because both qualitative and quantitative give you an entire picture of what's going on and gives you a better chance to make good decisions. So those words, measurable, that should definitely be on the good words list. I forgot to add it there. Measurable. You got to be able to measure it. If you can't measure it, how are you going to know if you meet it? Okay. Here it is here, results driven, measurable, they're bound to time. I'm writing a study guide for this particular test, and I have a whole section on SMART goals. And that's what you want to think about when you're talking about building these goals. They should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. I have more videos on that. Don't worry. We're not going to spend, if you don't know that situation, you should be learning about that in your leadership, but that's like the way to kind of look at a goal and determine if it's an effective goal or not. Okay. So let's just take a look at the test question here. Now, sorry, I don't mean to move it around too much. I always say this, and those of you who have attended my webinars before, you never start at the top of this test question. The test questions on the SLLA and the FELI are very lengthy. They'll have, like a big narrative here, and then they might even have a chart of data in between, and then another piece of the question, and it becomes like a hot mess. You start at the top here and work your way down. You are not setting yourself up for success because you're going to forget everything that's going on. Start down here in the answer choices and start to find those good words and eliminate bad words. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's take a look. Let me erase some of this stuff just so we have it. All right, let's look at A. Survey students and parents, develop a plan for implementation, outline communication. All right, I like develop a plan for implementation, surveying students and parents. Not the worst thing in the world. Let's keep moving. Evaluate the data. Oh, there's a good word. Determine the areas of need. Ooh, needs assessment. Good word. Plan to progress monitor and develop assessments. Those have all the good words in them. I'm going to put B as my main one here. Let's go to C. Research effective mathematics approaches. Choose the most appropriate and implement the practice. Not as good as B. D. Participate in professional development, implement best practices, and survey students. Sounds good, but it's not as good as B with the data and all those good words. Now, here's what happens when you start at the top. You start up here and you read, and then you read these answer choices, and all the answer choices then look good to you because these are all things you would do as an assistant principal or as a new leader, right? But there's one that is the most effective. And you can see here, what would be the best approach? They'll say that the best approach, the most effective. Sometimes they'll say, what should be the first thing a leader does? Pay attention. It's not just what could a leader do, it's what is the best or the most effective approach. And in this case, B, I don't care what the question says. B is for sure the most effective thing to do. And you will find this a lot on the SLLA, that you can go straight to the answer choices. And this one, I narrowed it down to 1. Sometimes you narrow it down to 2. Now read the question. An assistant principal at a team and a team of teachers are working on mathematic goals. So right away, we know this aligns with mission and vision. It's not a school goal, but it is a mathematics goal for the department. So it's still very important, very specific. What would be the best approach the team can make? Well, if you're developing goals, you need to evaluate data. Where are the deficits? Where do we need resources? Where do we need attention? Then you disaggregate the data, which we'll talk more about in a minute. If you don't know what that word means, don't worry. You disaggregate the data, you go down deep into the data, you determine the specific areas of needs, and then you target those areas, you align your goals, and you figure out how you're gonna measure to make sure you've met those goals. And B's got all of that in it. So make sure that you can identify those good words and make sure you can transfer your knowledge. Notice that the things that I said aren't necessarily verbatim in answer B, but it is the same idea. So you're going to have to transfer your knowledge as an educational leader and be sure that you can use that on test day. Don't look for exact test questions and exact words. It's not going to work out for you. You got to be able to use all, that critical thinking and discern that. All right, so here's another one for strategic leadership. This is section B, and this is commitments to implementing. And again, let's just take a look at the words that are in this particular test spec. Understands how to engage staff. Ooh, that can be tough, especially when you're maybe in a high school where staff is not used to working together. They're used to, I teach math, I teach social studies, I teach science kind of deal. Although most of the high school teachers I worked with were really open to all kinds of collaborative work. They just needed guidance for the most part, and they took it to a whole nother level. We want to identify strategies to engage internal and external communities. So that means your teachers are internal, right? And external is going to be outside. Parents, community members, things like that, to implement the vision. Remember, the vision is not just about the school. The school should be a beacon of hope for the community, no pressure, right? So you really should be talking to the community about visions and goals and things like that. And then right here is important, this building consensus and develops a plan to delegate responsibilities. It's not just about building consensus, like I have this goal I want to implement at my school. That's not how it works. It's more about building camaraderie and collaborative planning with everybody to build consensus so it's everybody's school, so that I care if there's a piece of trash in the parking lot, I'm going to pick it up because it's my school, it's my vision, it's my goal. That's what we're trying to do. And you also do that by delegating responsibilities. If you're a leader and you're like me, you're probably like, let me just do it. Let me do it. Just give it to me. And that's not the most effective way to do things. You've got to delegate responsibilities effectively to people. So that brings me to this question here. Kind of helps with all sections of this particular specification, section B, shared commitments. So again, we're not going to start here. I'm going to give you guys a minute to look at this question, start at the answer choices, and then see if you can narrow it down. And then read the question and see if you can get it. And I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. I'll just check the chat real quick. Good. Looks like you guys are getting it. BBB. All right, so let's just see here. Cite research that supports the adoption of new vision and goals. Well, I like cite the research. It's okay, but let's keep going. Form a committee of stakeholders to help develop the new vision and goals. Well, there's that commitment to collaboration, to engaging inside and outside communities. So B looks good to me. Let's go with C. Enlist the support of an outside contractor. That's considered a bad word. Let's go ahead and cross that off. If you see anything about hiring outside contractors, it's usually not the answer. Now, I am an outside contractor. I get hired by people to come in and do leadership webinars and teacher certification courses and all that. So I think outside contractors can provide value, especially if they're qualified. However, on this test, you really want to keep it inside the school and engage the community. And I will say that teachers and leaders are skeptical of outside contractors for the most part. When I go into a university to train their professors on how to teach teacher certification exams, they're not happy to see me for the most part. But then we build a relationship and then it becomes a great day. But for the most part, they want to keep it in their hands. So, outside contractors do provide value, but in this case, want to keep it in the school. And then D, require a group of teacher leaders to draft new goals. This is wrong for two reasons. The word require is kind of a negative word, and you want to stay away from negative words on this test, unless it's like something about a law or a policy, right? If it's required by law, then you would use the term require. But when we're trying to build consensus and work collaboratively with people, requiring this or requiring that tends to be a bad word. Even though using teacher leaders is a way to build, leadership in the building, having them just draft new goals certainly doesn't build consensus and doesn't bring in or engage the internal and external community. So D would be out. C's got that bad word, outside contractor. A and B are okay, but B is better. Let's go with the question. Let's look at it. A new principal is revising the school's vision and goals. What should the principal do to ensure buy-in? Well, right away, the term buy-in, that means consensus, right? So we're going to make sure that we choose B. Very good, everyone. Notice that you find the good words and you can answer these questions. Oh, another thing I want to tell you really quickly is the white stuff on my presentation. Notice I've cited it here. This is the ETS study companion. That is not NAVAED's work, but these questions right here are NAVAED's work. We wrote these questions. So anytime that I use the SLLA study guide, I'm going to cite it as their work, ETS, it's their intellectual property. And then I'll make sure I differentiate just so that there's no confusion on who's writing the test questions. We will use some of the ETS test questions though too. They're very well written, so we will use them, and you'll probably see them on the exam because they're in their test prep. All right, the next section is instructional leadership. It is the biggest portion of the exam. I think it's around 22 questions out of the 120 you're going to get on this. But the concepts that you'll see here in instructional leadership are pervasive throughout the entire assessment. So pay attention to these questions here. All right, so when we look in the study companion, and again, I'm not going through every single thing, I'm just picking out the pieces that are most relevant to this particular presentation. Let's take a look. It's all about building capacity, all right? And professional development in the building and building capacity. Now, this is easier said than done. Of course, you guys are in your leadership programs and you're learning all about professional development and how to choose meaningful professional development and all of that. And this is my bag. Professional development is my thing. This is the thing I love to do when I was an assistant principal. I love to work on professional development with teachers. I love to work on my own professional learning. It prepped me for the job I have now with all of you here. We got like 500 people that we're doing professional development with. But it's hard work, and it's hard to get teachers excited about it because it becomes just another thing teachers have to do. And so it's really important, and on this test, they assess you this way too, that you know how to build capacity with meaningful professional development that is aligned to the school goals and aligned to the standards, and that ultimately increases student achievement. There could be a cool professional development out in Las Vegas that everybody wants to go to, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to build student achievement or increase student achievement. I always hear teachers going to Las Vegas for conventions. I never had the opportunity to do that. They never sent us to Vegas. I mean, funds were tight. So it's usually you go to the district office for the professional development, but there are for sure great professional developments all over the country out there. All right, so here we've got knows how to develop and implement job embedded. Now, job embedded means that it has to do with their job. It's applicable to the job immediately. Nothing worse than attending professional development that you can't use. You have things to do with your life. So we want to make sure. It also needs to be standards-based. Remember, standards is a good word, and that it meets the learning needs of students and staff. Notice that students is first, because whatever professional learning you're giving to staff, you are going to be, it's going to be based on the standards for students. And then we have here, develops processes to support teachers. So you can't just implement professional development and walk away and go, okay, here, do this once a week and then walk away. You have to be there to support them with time, funding, moral support, your expertise, things like that. Analyzes situation and recommends appropriate teaching learning practices. Again, that has to do with A and B. Now, here's another piece of this part of building capacity. Feedback, ongoing feedback to teachers. And this ongoing feedback is actionable. And it happens from classroom walkthroughs, okay? The term classroom walkthrough on this test is going to be very important, because you're not going to know if teachers are doing what they're supposed to be doing, or if they're implementing the professional development, unless you get in and see them in action. The other thing is, you're not going to know how good teachers are until you see them in action. And I always give this example. I had an understanding of, like, when I met people, we all do this, who you think is a good teacher and who you think isn't, right? I'll just admit it. I'm sure we all do it. Oh, that guy's probably not very good. Or this lady, she's a little cuckoo. She can't be that good. And then I'd go in as an assistant principal and watch them, and they were like amazing instructors and just did so many amazing things. So that's why the classroom walkthrough, it is data collection at its finest. You are observing, you are collecting that data. It's anecdotal. It's right there in front of you. That, coupled with the test scores and survey data or whatever other data you are collecting, is going to give you the best picture of what's happening in the classroom. And then participates in collaborative data analysis. Now you collected the data on the teacher through the walkthrough. What do? Just send it to them and say, here's your walkthrough? No. Bring that teacher in, invite that teacher in, talk about the data together. What did you see? What did you like? What could you do differently next time? What are some of the practices that were aligned to the standards, and maybe what wasn't, or something like that? You always have to bring the teacher in to look at that data with you. It's a collaborative process. And then this word here, disaggregates test scores. You've got to dig down into the data and see where the problems are. Is it reading? Is it math? Okay, fine, it's reading. What about reading? Well, it's comprehension and fluency. Okay, who's having the most problems? Well, it's this group of students. Okay, let's differentiate. Let's target professional development there. That's disaggregating the data. In business, we call it getting meta with the data. So like digging down, figuring out, what are your customers like? What do they want? What's their story? How do they engage with your products? Things like that. Same thing with a school. What specifically do your students need? What stories does the data have to tell you? Because there are stories in the data, relevant, important information, but you got to dig for it. You got to look for it. Okay, let's go to a test question here. I'm going to let you guys do it for a minute. Let me just pull it up here. This is not from your handouts. We are going to go to your handouts, so don't worry. These are actually new questions, but take a look at this. I'll give you a minute and I'll just check in on the chat, see how things are going. Looks like we're all good. Great. All right, looks like answers are coming in. And I told you before we even started, like, notice how just a little bit of prep, you guys. But if you were to read these answer choices, don't they all seem like good answer choices? Like, survey teachers to determine how they and their students are using the program. Surveys are good. We use them all the time. We want to talk to students, right? Have teachers, that should say teachers, sorry about that. Have teachers engage in a professional book study to supplement the professional development. Well, doesn't that sound great? That sounds like a good thing to do. Have teacher leaders monitor teacher lesson plans. and look for areas where the teacher plans implement the program. Sounds a little punitive where you're kind of having teacher leaders look at plans and play gotcha. But look at this, conduct regular walkthroughs to observe teachers implementing the programs and continuously collect data to monitor progress. Notice those good words. And it took you guys 15 seconds to locate that. But if you started up here and you read all the way through and then you started reading all the answer choices, it's going to be harder for you to locate that good answer choice. Let's just check the question, making sure that it works. Teachers at a new school have been engaging in ongoing professional development, so good, to increase student achievement in reading informational text. So we have a specific thing there, reading informational text. What is the most effective way? So all these things could be effective, but what's the most effective way school leaders can ensure teachers are implementing the new professional learning with fidelity? That's a key word too. With fidelity means they're doing it the way it's supposed to be done. And for sure, you've got to go in and do the walkthrough. Now, somebody just asked, does this strategy work for Feely as well? This is where I got the strategy, is from doing Feely. This is Feely is where we got our start on these leadership exams. And then I go in and examine SLLA, and it's the same thing going on here. And again, as a good leader, what are you going to do? You probably do all of these things, but the best leader collects the data. The best leader continues to monitor progress and uses walkthroughs regularly. Now, this is hard when you got stuff going on in the school. Some kid gets busted smoking in the bathroom and this and that, and you thought you were going to do 4 walkthroughs that day. And now you got, the kid's parents in, you've got 4 days of suspension going, and it's just a big thing. And you didn't get to your walkthroughs, and it happens, but the classroom is the most important place. That's why we're here. So we need to get into classrooms as much as possible. My mom was a principal, and she did a thing for a year where she didn't have a desk in her office. She was in classrooms. That's all she did, was work in classrooms. So that's a little extreme. My mother is a little extreme on her educational leadership. She's retired now, so she doesn't even talk about it. But back in the day, she was hardcore, and she was in classrooms as much as possible because that instructional leadership is key. Now, let me see. Do I have another question for instructional leadership? I do. This one I love. This one I posted online in our Facebook group. Don't worry if you don't know about the Facebook group, you will before the end of this webinar. But we have a private Facebook group for people who are working on their leadership exams. And it's not like super secret private. If you're a teacher and you want to do your leadership and you're thinking about it, you can join the Facebook group too. But I like this question because it really drives home a couple of things that are really important. So first of all, I've got this whole big piece here, right? And then I have my answer choices here. So this is a good one where you wouldn't be able to narrow it down so easily. All right. So I'm going to give you a second to take a look at this. Just get to know it for a second. And then we're going to talk about it. For me, if I start with the answer choices first, I really like C and D. I don't know what the question is yet, but I really like C and D. You want to stay away from the faculty meeting, not all the time, because in a faculty meeting, you've got everybody and it can be not too targeted. You'll see questions like, a new policy is required by the district. What would be the best way to implement the new policy? And it was like, have a faculty meeting and have the teachers talk about it. If it's a required policy, we're not having a debate about it. We can't take a whole faculty meeting and debate about it. It's just not going to work. But C and D has more of the good words in it. I know this has needs assessment in it, and that's good. Have a faculty meeting to discuss the findings. I don't hate this answer choice, but I certainly don't love it more than C and D. So I've narrowed it down to C and D. Now let's take a look here. A new assistant principal is tasked with implementing a professional development program for the math team. Below are a series of steps the school leader takes. So the first step is gather the data. Good. Gather the data. Conduct a needs assessment. All right, I gather the data, then I dig deep into the data and I look myself as the leader. I conduct a needs assessment, okay? Then there's a step missing, then implement professional development. Whoa, we jumped a little far here to the implementation part, okay? And I got people saying C and D here. Now let's narrow this down. Choose a professional development that is aligned to the state standards. Well, you've got the alignment to the state standards. Very good. Very, very good. But the leader is just going to choose the professional development. Just, I'm going to collect the data. I'm going to conduct a needs assessment. I'm going to choose the professional development. I'm going to implement the professional development. And I'm going to progress monitor. I'm going to do it. All along the way. No. Where are the teachers? The main thing missing from this steps are the teachers. You got to put the teachers in on the process or they're not going to want to do your professional development. How many of you have gone and thought up the most amazing professional development? Everybody should want to do this. Yeah, right. Nobody wants to do it if they're not part of the planning process. This is an issue where you have a good word, needs assessment, or a good word, state standards, but you got to dig a little deeper. D has good words too, forming a committee to lead the implementation. That's good words, especially for strategic leadership and instructional leadership, because you want teachers to be part of the engaging the community, right? And that's the one thing this is missing. If you did C, it would be okay, but you would be missing the teacher part. Teacher-led professional development is key. Let me just stop sharing and give you a quick example here. It's one of my best professional development examples. When I was an assistant principal, I was really into the professional development. Like I told you before, I wanted to train the team and all the new stuff, and I wanted to do all this new things. And my principal was forever going, Jasper, just relax. You know, no one's going to want to do that. But we really wanted to do professional learning communities when they first started. And I, along with my team member, she was the assistant principal of curriculum. We both had instructional leadership backgrounds. We decided to do this professional learning community thing. And I was all ready to go. I was ready to do my speech and tell all the teachers why it was good and why they need to do it. And the research, I had everything ready to go, PowerPoint, the whole deal. And my team member said to me, I want the baseball coaches to deliver the professional development. And I was like, the baseball coaches, okay. And these baseball coaches were actually math teachers as well. And they were already working in PLCs because we were trying it out with the math team first. And these guys were killing it with their backwards design, using curriculum, using the blueprint to, that was our initiative. We were using the blueprint like I'm doing now to map instruction and to map classroom assessments to prepare the students for the EOCs. We were in a high school and they were doing it really, really well. And so it was her idea to have them, the baseball coaches who never present to the school, ever give the professional development. And I was totally bummed. I wanted to do it. I wanted to deliver it, of course. But let me tell you what, when those guys stood up to deliver on the professional learning communities that they're engaging in and the data analysis they're conducting, and that the baseball coaches were part of this, teachers were lining up after that after the professional development session to start their own PLCs. Because the guys stood up and they were like, we've been able to monitor student progress. My scores have increased. We do X, Y, and Z. It's been really cool. It's not that hard. It's super easy. We do it every day. It's fun meeting with the department and figuring out how to do this. And it worked. And every department wanted to do a professional learning community. Now, if I had stood up and done it myself, they would have been like, here she is again with another initiative and so excited about implementing more professional development that I don't have time for. So you got to have the teachers. I love that story. So that's why I tell it. Back to work. Okay. All right. So remember that story when you're tasked with doing professional development, and teacher-led professional development is key. All right. Another part of the instructional leadership portion is the rigorous curriculum and instruction. There are those good words again, rigorous. We have here, understands how to strengthen teachers' knowledge of rigorous curriculum. They're going to need training on that. And of course, it all changes. Things change. You guys know that, the pendulum swings. Here we have the word relevance, ensures collaborative. There's that word again, standards-based instruction. See how it's all the same over and over again? Analyze student work and monitor progress, collaboratively facilitates disaggregation of data. That's what you're doing in your PLCs. You're digging deep into the data, and as an assistant principal, I'm helping you, or you're helping your teachers to do that. There were days I just baked cupcakes for PLCs and let them do their thing, but they had cupcakes. You're there to support teacher collaboration as they analyze data and target interventions to increase student achievement and close the achievement gap. It's a mouthful. It's easier said than done, of course. Day to day gets in the way. All right, let's take a look at this. I'm going to let you have a minute. Remember, start with the answer choices first and go with the test question after that. I mean, it's so easy. It's right there, isn't it? Looks like everybody's got it. Now, before you had taken this webinar, before you had looked at the test specs, you wouldn't even think about these things. B is good words, very much so. You see this word disaggregate data, it's probably the correct answer, because not only are you looking at data, you're digging down into the data. Now, we have a webinar coming up that we're going to get more into that, like how to do it, because you're going to be asked to disaggregate data and write for this exam. So, and when you're doing your writing for this exam, remember these words, remember these practices, remember what is important as an instructional leader. So we go with A, survey teachers to determine their interests. That's cool, but not as good as disaggregating data. So we're going to cross it off. B is our big hitter right here. C, communicate with the district office and be sure to follow district-wide professional development and for reading and math. Well, of course you're going to do that. Like, that's important. But remember, we're looking for the best way, what would be the most effective way to determine what to implement. So C is out. D, plan professional development in reading and math in the content area for all teachers. That leaves the teachers out. You're planning it for all teachers. It seems very blanketed approach. You want to have a more targeted approach. B is the best answer, and I barely had to read the question. Okay, and then the last part, assessment and accountability. This is a big part of instructional leadership. It's important that you know this. You guys got to know your different types of assessments. If you are in a leadership program, you should know these. I have a lot of videos on assessments on our YouTube channel and in our courses. There are several different types. We're going to go through a few of them because I have a couple of them on the handouts, and I am going to jump to the handouts in a minute. But you need to know what assessments go with what and how to use them properly and how to use the data to make instructional decisions, okay? So, and it's all here, you know, using assessment to improve the quality, ongoing analysis of data, analyze multiple sources. That means your qualitative, your quantitative, your surveys, your observations, all of it is data. Bring it all in, organize it, disaggregate it, and use it. Use it every day. Remember, it's not a feelings factory. And again here, using it to evaluate student learning, and then provides timely feedback to teachers. Remember, if you're doing observation data in your walkthroughs, that you need to give that feedback and that data analysis to your teacher as quickly as possible. All right, so which of the following is the most effective way to use a criterion referenced assessment? Now, had you gone straight to the answer choices, I read the first part, you would see this. B, to drive instructional decisions. Why do we use data ever? Why do we use data? The only reason to use data is to drive instructional decisions. In fact, a representative from Pearson taught me this. The only reason you should be using assessments is to make decisions. Otherwise, they are a waste of time. A weekly spelling test yields nothing unless you are going to use that spelling test to make a decision the following week. And you could, spelling tests yield important phonemic or phonological awareness data. However, that's a reading term. If you're not a reading teacher, I apologize, but spelling tests could yield data that you need to use. However, the best way to do this is to drive instructional decisions. Now, criterion reference, just so you know, they're giving you a specific, and I've seen questions like this on the exam. They're giving you a specific thing. So you're looking for, well, what is a criterion referenced assessment? Well, the criterion referenced assessment, and again, I go through this more in depth in other courses, but a criterion referenced assessment is a state standardized test at the end of the semester or whatever. You would not use that at the end of a lesson. Criterion reference is a state standardized test. And that comes, it doesn't happen because of lessons, all right? To compare student performance, that's usually a norm referenced exam. Oops, and I came off the page there, but a norm referenced exam. The main reason, and then to decide where a place for class ranking, that's norm referenced as well. The best answer choice is here to drive instructional decisions. Every assessment, no matter what assessment that is happening, should be used to drive instructional decisions. That's it, okay? And that's the most important thing. All right, so let me just go to the handouts really quickly because where are my handouts? Are they here? They're here. These are the handouts you received with the webinar. If you didn't receive them yet, don't worry, you'll get them in the link. They were, if you're watching this in the future, you already downloaded them because we will have this available in the future. So don't worry, you can get them. If you can't find them, email us or re-register and they'll be automatically sent to you. But these types of questions you will see on the exam. They're a lot more in depth. We've got vertical alignment versus horizontal alignment here. There's a lot of different things that I go through here. This is a nice comprehensive study guide that has questions for everything. And it's got detailed answer explanations, but you'll notice here that all of these have to do with instructional leadership. And you're going to want to look at those good words when you're using this little post test. Now, if you've already done this, that's fine before you did the webinar. But if you haven't done this yet, I would do this as a post test after the webinar is over and see how you do, because you'll probably do very, very well. And of course, pay close attention to the detailed answer explanations. We make sure we give you really good detailed answer explanations so that you know why something is right and why something is wrong, because that can help you out a lot on the exam. All right. All right. So that's because I wanted to do some new material, I added some more questions to this presentation, and you will get access to this presentation. If you're watching this in the future, not live, you already have the presentation, so don't worry. Okay, let's go to section 3, climate, culture, and leadership. This is about building a culture of collaboration, making sure your culture in your school is positive. This is really hard to do. This is something that it takes a lot of practice, especially if you're coming in to turn around a school. There could be some culture issues there. When we talk about climate and culture in an organization, we're talking about the way the organization runs. And of course, in real life, not just on this test, we want to build a culture of collaboration. Now, you as the leader, you're going to have to make decisions on the fly as a leader, because that's your job. But when it comes to the big stuff, we want to build a culture of collaboration. So we have here, a school leader knows how to create opportunities and a safe environment that allows people to express their beliefs, values, and ideas. That has to do with being culturally responsive, building a diverse faculty and staff, helping everyone understand cultural responsiveness, cultural diversity. This is a big part of our training that we do with leaders, and it's an important one. So make sure you're on the lookout for test questions like this, and make sure as a school leader, you are being aware of your cultural bias, that you are trained in being culturally responsive. And it doesn't matter what race you are from, everybody needs training on being culturally aware, because we all have different bias and things like that. But certainly someone who is working in a school that is of a different ethnicity, if I as a white person am being a leader at a school where there's a whole other set of students from another ethnic background, or from any other different genders, there's all different types of diversity. I need to be sure that I am trained in understanding different cultures and things like that. So it's not just for us to make other people do, it's for us to make ourselves do too, because it's really, really important. You want to provide an atmosphere where it's appropriate to take risks. I love risks. I'm a risk taker. I quit my job and started a company. I always try new things and fall on my face. And I want everybody to have the opportunity to try things and fail repeatedly, because when you come out the other side, it's better. So when they're appropriate risks, obviously we don't want kids, driving the school bus. That's not a risk we want to take. But risks, trying new things, failing, trying again, failing, that's resiliency. Procedures and provide time and resources for collaborative teaching. There we go again. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at this question. I'll give you a minute. Remember what I talked to you about, your good words, and see if you can figure this one out. Oops, this looks like it's the same question. Sorry. That looks like it's the same question. So let me go ahead and think on the fly here. Let's go to my, let's go here. I'll pick one. I'm trying to find one that aligns with that. Let's see. Sorry, that was too much on the fly for me. I have another one. Here. Let's do this one. Sorry about that, guys. I will fix it in my presentation, so when you get it, you have the right thing. That was a repeat of the last one. So let's take a look at this one for equity. We've got this here. So let's look right here. This has to do with the same thing, building a culture of collaboration, and also having the school leader, being culturally appropriate, helping students. So we have call the students' parents to notify them that the students will be questioned, investigate the situation and bring the students in to answer questions about the cheating plan, work with the teacher to closely monitor the students and intervene if they do indeed cheat, call the district office and follow their protocol for cheating offenses. Okay, so this has to do with equity and cultural responsiveness, and this has to do with what I just talked about in terms of building a culture of collaboration in the school and also checking our bias. One of the biggest things here is this privacy rights and due process. We got to make sure that when we are using discipline in the schools, that we are keeping students' rights in mind and using due process. Now, just by looking at the answer choices here, I don't have a huge idea of what's going on. I do like investigate the situation. C looks also good because we have the term closely monitor. Let me read the question first and see what's up. This is one of those harder ones. A teacher alerts the assistant principal to say that she believes 2 students are planning to cheat on a state exam. What should the assistant principal do first? Okay, this is serious. A state exam that could put the teacher in jeopardy of messing up a state assessment, put the students in jeopardy of not having their scores counted. It can put the school in jeopardy. It's a bad thing. Don't mess with state assessments. It's a big deal, okay? So we have, call the parents and notify them that the students will be questioned is jumping the gun a bit. We don't know what's going on yet. Like, let's not call the parents right away. We may have to call the parents, but it says, what's the first thing you do? And the first thing is not pick up the phone and call the parent. Unless the student is hurt on the floor, needs an ambulance, something like that, you don't call the parents right away. Now, I put C in here, and it looks like a lot of you are choosing C in here for a purpose. What would you do first? Would you just let the students and see what happens, see if they cheat? Not a good plan. Not a good plan at all. You've got to investigate. This is part of the due process, and I believe the term investigations is right here. I will say that as a new assistant principal, and that's what many of you are going to be, a new assistant principal, I jumped the gun so many times. I didn't investigate. I just immediately went to the boom, they did it. They're kids. They did it. Let's call the parents. Let's suspend them, right? We don't know yet. This teacher could be wrong. Mistakes happen. I know we always expect the worst, and it's kind of hard not to expect the worst when you've been dealing with discipline for so long. But it doesn't mean they're going to do it. You have to investigate. And when you bring the kids in, that's due process. Sit them down, look at them. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. What do you got planned? Maybe they're repeat offenders. Maybe you know they got something going on. I know what you got going on. Let's talk about it now so that you don't end up in trouble and you don't get us in trouble. What do you have to say about this? And let them say what's going on. So you can't just take the teacher's word for it. I'm not here to discredit teachers. We need to support teachers. They need support because there are kids that are disrespectful, or there are kids that disrupt, or there are kids that put the state assessments in jeopardy, for sure. But you can't just go with what the teacher says. You've got to go in and investigate what's going on. And this is serious. So investigation and the due process, be on the lookout. C sounds good, but it is not correct. We need to closely monitor the situation, or we need to investigate first. Don't closely monitor and let them do it. You gotta protect kids from themselves. Otherwise, it's just not a good situation. We all know that, don't we? Got to protect them from themselves. All right. Ethical leadership runs into this as well. This is going to be more about your laws and things like that. Let's take a look at the test specs here. A school leader understands how to model. Modeling is really important. You can't be talking about collaborative this, collaborative that, and then not be collaborative. You can't talk about, a great school culture and all that, and then not be, part of the process. Sorry, it's a little parched there. Okay, behaves in a trustworthy manner. Hopefully, yes, if you're becoming an assistant principal or a principal, you're doing that. Recognizes when ethics have been breached. If they've been breached, you got to go in. This is, if you see a teacher who is engaging in unethical behavior, this is where there is no gray area. You got to report it. You got to document it. You have to protect the students. Hold self and others accountable. Got all that. We know that pretty much. We want to promote values of individual freedom and responsibility and social justice and all of that. Ethics have to do with allowing your students to express themselves. They're allowed to assemble. They're allowed to protest. They have First Amendment rights. It may be disruptive to your school environment. Protests are supposed to be disruptive. Let me just stop sharing there for a second. Students have the right to protest, assemble peacefully. They have to, and this is all from Tinker versus Des Moines, US Supreme Court case. Students in the 1960s wore black armbands on their shirts to protest the Vietnam War. The school saw it as disruptive and wanted to take that away. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with the students. Students have constitutional rights when they're in the school. You have an obligation to protect the students and all the other students as well. But if the students follow the rules and they use their rights appropriately, they are allowed to walk out to protest. That's the definition of a protest. It is disruptive. It's supposed to be. Otherwise, it's an activity. And an activity is different than a protest. So when students want to protest, if you catch wind of a protest or some sort of assembly, you have to consider the students' rights, make sure it's not going to be a free-for-all ridiculous thing. And you should bring in the leaders of the protest and talk to them. You may be able to talk to them and come to an agreement and be like, hey, I'll let you protest, but you got to make sure you're in dress code. Don't come down here in like crazy stuff. You got to be in dress code. You got to follow the rules. We'll let the protest go on. And normally that's a better approach than, no, you can't protest. It's a disruption. This is ridiculous. That's never a good thing. Keep your cool, let the kids do what they got to do, but also keep your school safe. Okay. All right. Let me pep talk over. Let's share screen again. All right. Okay, and that goes into social justice and all of that. Makes data rationales explicit. This has to do with when you're talking to students or talking to teachers, you say, I came to this decision because of the data, or we're doing this because of the data. Very important. All right, so this is a ETS question. As you can see, I've cited it down there. If we look at the answer choices, we can see that it's not as easy to figure out what we need, right? What we're trying to do here. So what I'd like you to do is read the question first, because you're not going to be able to do this. An elementary teacher, you're not going to be able to look at the answer choices. An elementary school leader is contacted by the parents of a school who broke his arm. They are concerned that he will be unable to complete assignments because of the inability to write. The school leader can best address the parent's concern. What can we do? Well, most of you are putting it in there. It is Section 504 Rehabilitation Act. C is the right answer. Now, this one, it wouldn't have worked very well if you were just going to do the answer choices. You have to read the question on this one because you need to figure out, this is more of a definition type question. But Section 504 is part of IDEA, and it is part of the Rehabilitation Act, and it's a temporary fix. It's temporary accommodations. And in this situation, you can't punish the student for breaking his arm. So you're going to have to make accommodation. Maybe they can dictate into a tape recorder. Maybe they use, a tape recorder. Who uses a tape recorder? What am I talking about? I'm sure there's some sort of software the kid can use, and you can justify it under 504. But the most important thing as a school leader is that you're going to need to communicate that to teachers. Teachers, they're in the thick of it. And some kids out 2 weeks, for some reason, they've got, in a high school, they got 200 kids. If you're in a non-core area, you've got 300 kids, 400 kids that you're looking after. So this kid's broken arm is like not on their radar, but you as the principal or assistant principal need to make sure your teachers are giving the student an opportunity to show mastery of standards, and the broken arm shouldn't be there. So this is temporary accommodations. It's just one of those ethical things that you got to do. It's one of those random questions that you can't just look at the answer choices. You actually have to know what the 504 is. All right, organizational leadership. Moving on to the next section. And these are a little shorter. I'm only doing one question here because I want to get to the writing. And we are on time, which I'm very excited about, never on time. This is the next section, organizational leadership. This has to do with facilities and all of that. Look, guys, another pep talk. Sorry, I got to do it. Instructional leadership is really important, and making sure that your teachers are aligned to this, teaching alignment to the standards, making sure you're analyzing data and stuff like that. But if the toilets are overflowing and the football field doesn't have any grass on it, and there's a school dance happening and there's 400 kids at the door and there's a bottleneck, these facility type questions and your duties to run a safe, clean, effective school is a big part of the job as well. And I know we focus a lot on instructional leadership because it's very important, but as new leaders, you're probably going to have the opportunity to oversee construction projects and things like that. And I highly recommend, if you have an opportunity to do that in an internship or something like that, that you take the opportunity to do construction and more facilities types jobs if you are one that's only instructional leadership minded. Schools need good building administrators too. And especially as a female on the team, a lot of times, and I'm speaking in generalities here, the guys get the building jobs and the girls get the curriculum jobs, right? But I loved the building jobs. I loved the construction projects. And I have a couple friends who are still assistant principals who have overseen total renovations of their schools. And these women pay such attention to detail that the schools are just like incredible. So not to say one gender is better than the other. I'm not here to debate that today, but don't get pigeonholed. I'm only a buildings guy, right? I do the facilities. No, you need to do the facilities and the instructional leadership. Or I'm an instructional leadership person. I don't know anything about toilets. No, if you're going to be an AP, you got to know about toilets. You got to know to put the toilet paper up here so the kids don't pee on the toilet paper. You learn that as an AP. Got to put the TP up high. Otherwise, and if you put it up high, then they know not to do that because then they have an accident and then they got to walk around school and then they know not to do that again. So it's called self-directing behavior. All right. So let's take a look at this one. Now, organizational leadership has to do with keeping your facilities clean, lending out your facilities to outside organizations, making sure you're ready for fire, safety, water, all of that. You'll get questions on those. But let's just take a look at a question that you might see on here. So let's look at the answer choices first and see if you can quickly get the answer here. If not, check out the question. So we have A, The pastor verifies that there's no other facility available. B, the district allows other outside organizations to use the school facilities. C, the pastor agrees that the church group will be responsible for the building maintenance on Sundays. D, the community is notified that the building is being used for religious services. All right, so just knowing what I know, I can think, okay, this is a facilities question, probably renting it out to a church, which happens all the time. You are allowed to rent your facilities out to religious organizations, other groups. So it basically says here, a local pastor seeks approval from the school. They want to use the school cafeteria on Sundays. Which of the following conditions should happen? Well, the only thing here, and this is all about equity and allowing, making sure facilities are being used in an equitable manner. You need to make sure that the district allows for other outside organizations, all organizations. So you can't just lend it to an organization that you feel aligns to your beliefs. If you give it to the Christian organization, you got to make it available for other denominations, other religions, other organizations, maybe your NAACP, local NAACP organization in the community, or the LGBTQ community. Maybe there's a community of students that want to use the cafeteria. Your church organizations, your atheist organizations, whatever it is. If you're going to give it to one, you got to give it to all, as long as they're a lawful organization. Obviously, if they're a terrorist group or someone who's planning some sort of situation, we're not going to do that. But you got to make sure that you are giving that all, that everybody has an opportunity to do that. So that can sometimes mix people up. But everybody, you can lend it out to religious organizations. Nowhere does it say you can't do that. And finally, the last portion of the multiple choice section is community engagement leadership. This is all about your stakeholders and you getting out there into the community to do it. That means parents, that means community members, that means anybody who has a stake in the school. Let's take a look at what a question would look like for this one. Oh, I like this question. This is a good question. So first, let's look at the specs here. Knows how to access and use resources from the school, family members, community, and that support students. You can't do it all in the school. You need help. You need business leaders to come in. You need people to help. And you want kids to have that information from all different people. Collaborates, there's that word again, with community members, faculty, staff, to ensure barriers to learning are removed. Barriers to learning, that could be funding. Funding is a barrier to learning. So maybe the outside community helps you maybe with a fundraiser, teacher, parent organizations, things like that. Integrates a variety of program services that fully engage the school and the entire community. So lending out the facilities for different organizations brings the community in. Sure, intramural baseball, intramural basketball, things like that. Although as a principal of a school, sometimes you don't want to lend out your school because people leave it trashed. I mean, just real world scenario in here, it's hard to lend out your school because it's like some people just don't treat it the way they're supposed to treat it. But anyways, let's take a look at number 9. Again, we got a big scenario here. Let's not start there. Let's start with the answer choices. Take a look and put your answers in the chat. Looks like you're coming in here with C's, and C is correct. Now, all of them feel good if I were to read them. The PTO will hold fundraising events to supplement the school budget, allowing for more significant purchases to be made. Well, guess what? Yes, it will. And we like the PTO for that reason. If you have a robust PTO at your school and they're out there, I had some parents at our school, man, they were crazy. They wanted the school to have so much. And so they were out there constantly, doing things and getting funds and putting them towards new equipment and stuff like that. It was fantastic. But this is more, talking about purchases, not the best one. I don't hate it, but let's keep moving. The PTO will assist the school administrators in making decisions about student activities that impact education. Now, I know we say we want to bring the PTO in, and we do want collaborative decision-making, but the PTO helping us make decisions that impact education, they do. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it. Let's keep moving. C, the PTO will provide a way for parents to be more involved in their children's education and foster a sense of community between families and educators. You guys are right. C. It's better than B. B is collaborative, but C is talking about the relationship. And then D, the PTO will reduce the number of transient families and establish a common vision. There's nothing wrong with transient families. Every school has transient families. It's not us to say who's allowed to come to school and who's not. So students are transient. They work in different areas with their parents. Everybody's family situation is different. This is another piece of diversity. Diversity should be seen as an asset. Now, is high mobility and people moving in and out of the school hard on school grade and things like that? Yes, it is. But that's the challenge we need to face and tackle and embrace as leaders, because that is a part of being an educational leader, is navigating that. And we don't want to reduce the number of transient families. We're not shutting the door on anybody. And so that should be a red flag that is out. But C is the best answer here. It's got all the good words, and you guys are right. You did awesome. So that finishes the multiple choice portion of the exam. I'm just going to check my chat here. It looks like you guys are all very engaged on here in terms of what's going on. You guys are answering questions and things like that. So well done. You're also talking in the chat on the Zoom link. So now what I'd like to do is move right along into the writing, and we're not going to go hugely in depth. We are going to have another writing webinar. I am going to talk to you about that. But I did want to cover the writing because I think there are some people who are taking this test relatively soon. And some of you asked, oh my God, the writing. But the writing's easy once you do my formula. Now, remember, the writing is about assessing your abilities assess your abilities and communicating how you are going to be doing this. So you're going to see something like this. So it's called a constructed response. You have to do it 4 times. In the FEELE, you only have to do it once. On the SLLA, there are 4. Now, this is good and bad, right? You have a lot more chances. You have more opportunity, but also you have limited time. So you're going to have to learn to organize your thoughts, answer the question very, very specifically, and get going on it as fast as you can, but as efficiently as you can. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay. So you have to do 4 constructed responses. The best it's from a scale of 0 to 3. 2 people are going to read your responses. And if they agree within 1 point, it's going to be good to go. If they disagree by more than 1 point, they bring in a 3rd reader. Now, ideally, there are different readers for each response. Ideally, that doesn't mean they have all these graders. This is done by hand. This is not done by a computer. So this is people. And that means it's subjective, and that means there is bias already built in. And so you're going to want to take out as much bias and give yourself the best chance possible. I know it doesn't say that your grammar and your ability to write is going to be assessed here. It's more about the ideas. But I will tell you, if your grammar is nice and clean, if your sentences are concise and your ideas are concise, you're going to do a lot better on this exam than if you just wing it. So I have a lot of grammar tutorials on our YouTube channel. Some of you are really good writers, but your grammar has got problems, or you have good ideas, but you don't know how to organize them. Check out my writing tutorials. We will go through some of it today, but the more you practice this, the better it is. So just remember that. Now, I'm just going to use what they had on the website here. I am going to zoom in a little bit so you can see both. Basically, what you get is this here. It says that this is your constructed response. And I'm not going to read all this to you because you didn't come to a webinar to listen to me read to you. But you're going to have this big old piece of stuff here. And this is broken up on 2 pages on their thing. So you've got Deckler Middle School is an urban school. They use benchmark tests to assess knowledge. The questions on the benchmark tests are aligned to the state mandated assessments. So all the stuff we're using right now. Ms. O'Malley is the new assistant principal. She's reviewing school level and teacher level results of tests. She recognizes a concerning trend in this teacher's scores, basically. So Ms. O'Malley bringing in the scores, she's looking at them. She's doing a needs assessment. She's figuring out what's going on. She's analyzing the data, and she sees that Ms. Slocum's scores are low. Okay, and Ms. Slocum is a 7th grade science teacher. All right. So the assistant principal, Ms. O'Malley, completes several walkthroughs. So another way to collect the data. So she's done it 2 ways. She's collected the scores, right? She's done the students' test scores, and she's collected walkthroughs. So we have a smorgasbord, as you will, of data, different types of observation data versus test scores. So that's good. And she noticed some things about her observation. Ms. O'Malley, who is the assistant principal, wants to work with the teacher to provide instructional coaching to improve. So she must see something that's going on that's not good. All right. Now, the documents here that the assistant principal has is the 7th grade benchmark results. So those are your scores and the walkthroughs, and that's your more qualitative, right? Qualitative. That's going to be your observational data, things you write down, stuff like that. All right, so we've got that. Now let's go to the second portion of it. Right here, these 2 bullets, that's your rubric. Those are the tasks you have to complete, okay? Please keep it concise. Don't go off into la la land. Just do what these 2 things are asking you to do. No more, no less, all right? So let's look at those bullets really quickly. Just like I look at the answer choices first, I want to look at these bullets quickly. Using the information in the documents provided, and they give them to you below. They gave you test scores, and I have something else on the other page. It wouldn't all fit on the same page. So using the information in the documents provided, identify 3, not 2, not 1, not 5, 3 actions the school leader should include in the plan to help Ms. Slocum. So we've got this data. Now we need 3 actionable things that we can do with this teacher. And it doesn't matter what those things are. You just have to they have to do something. And then they have to improve professional practice. And then this is the key: justify each identified action. Why are you doing this? Where in the data does it support this? Okay. So for each identified action, explain how the action will help improve Ms. Slocum's professional practice. So again, this is the other thing you have to do. You need to make sure your identified action explains. And I'll tell you something in a minute. When I did mine, I did this. I'm going to show you what I did. When I went back and looked, I really didn't address bullet number 2 here. So I had to go back in and just add a sentence to each thing. That's all you have to do. But want to make sure that you check that box. So this needs to happen and this needs to happen. Okay. Now our documents are this. We have our school or some assessment data here. Now this is the department results. Okay. It's the department results versus the teacher's results. So the whole department, last year they were at an 86 in matter and mass, that's standard. And remember, this is science. Doesn't matter what content area it is. It's just data. We're disaggregating the data. We're going down. So we see last year they were at 86. Now they improved to 89. Good, up 3 points. In the energy standards, students were at 85 last year. Now they're at 90. And force and motion, they were at 78, and now they're at 83. So we're going up. We're moving in the right direction. But look at Ms. Slocum's results. Ms. Slocum's are way below. Look at the 76 to this 89. I mean, it's over 10 percentage points below. Same with this, 12 percentage points below. 13 percentage points below. Not only that, if I'm going to get meta with the data again, notice last year I went from an 80 to a 76. I'm actually going in the wrong direction in Ms. Slocum's class. We did increase in energy from a 76 to a 78, but even last year she's way below. So she's still not moving the kids. All right, now you're going to need more information. You're not going to be able to just go, okay, Ms. Slocum's a terrible teacher. We're done here. No, we're going to need to look at everything. And that's why, what do? We go in, sorry. We go in and we conduct a walkthrough. And now this is from the ETS study companion. This is a piece of the evidence. And now remember, you got to do this 4 times. You got to move through this quickly. Here's the performance data. And I'm just going to underline some keywords here. So this is the rubric. We all use different rubrics when we do walkthroughs. This looks like one of the ones that I would use when I was an assistant principal. They're all basically the same. Some use Marzano's, some use the Danielson rubric, some use other ones. They all do the same thing. So for instructional planning, we have instructional objectives of the lesson is provided. That's good. In a student-friendly language, good again. But here's the problem. I see no evidence of use of instructional data to plan. So there's a point we can go on. Remember, we want to look for the weakness, and that's where we're going to target, the action. So this is a problem, the use of instructional data. So we need to talk about data-driven decisions. There's a problem there. There's something lacking there. Let's go to instructional strategy. Direct instruction is supplemented with scientific inquiry labs. Okay, inquiry labs. Good, good, good. When working in labs, students are engaged but not recording their investigations. And during group lessons, some students take notes, but when asked about direct instruction, they just say, we listen to the teacher and she provides a review sheet with questions before the test. Not the best situation. Okay, so we do have some collaborative work going on, but the kids are not totally engaged. And it looks to me like the teacher's doing some of the work for the students. If she's given them like a cheat sheet or a worksheet that's supposed to supplement engagement, that's not a good thing. So I might be able to go on that. Assessment, she reviews the class average for assignments and tests. She feels that this data are best for informing parents of student learning. Class averages for student learning? No, we need class, like student data. The class average doesn't tell me what each student needs. And it says she uses teacher developed assessments, but upon review, I see that most questions are multiple choice, selected response with few open-ended questions. That's a problem. Not that you can't write a really good multiple choice test, you can, but it doesn't look like she's doing that. And there's no open-ended for that, to really determine that authentic application of standards by students. Professionalism, Ms. Slocum participates in professional growth opportunities when provided by the school. I mean, you can't dock a teacher for only doing the PD at school. They have a lot going on. There are teachers out there who are not going to rush out and do extra professional development. So I wouldn't go anything there. And the communication at department meeting, reviewing the results, blah, blah, blah. A couple of teachers stayed after the meeting to complete an item analysis. I'll talk to you about what that is. Ms. Slocum created lesson plans for the upcoming unit. So a little observation there. She probably should have stayed and talked with her department to plan better. It looks like she's not really engaging in the kind of the PLC situation that she should be in order to improve instruction. So based on this here, I wrote some notes. Now, the rubric asked for 3 actionable things, right? So what I did on my notes, and you're going to have notes, please map it out quickly. Now, this was nice. I typed it. If I were writing, it would not look like this. But I'm going to use these 3 things to drive my response. Planning, use it. It's from here. I'm going to go with instructional planning, instructional strategies, and assessment. Those are the 3 things that I decided to focus on because they had the most problems. We have a problem here. We got a problem here. We got a problem here. These last 2, they're a little vague. I like to pinpoint things that I can talk about specifically. So I'm looking for 3 things. So immediately, what do? I go to planning, I go to instructional strategies and assessment. Those are the 3 areas here that I find to be the most beneficial that I can use to talk about. I'm going to focus on helping Ms. Slocum use data to drive instruction. I'm also going to talk about critical thinking in the classroom and assessment, design, and analysis. Those are things I know a lot about, and I'm going to talk about them. Now, you should also know a lot about them. Maybe not so much this design and analysis. I know that because that's what I do for a living. But you could, maybe talk about here, because she didn't stay after in her PLCs, you could talk about motivation to engage with the department or something like that. I don't know, but this is what I would choose. Underneath that, once I write my 3 things, I'm just going to quickly talk about, and these are a little nicer. I probably just write quick bullet notes, but Okay, fine. Using data to drive instruction. Let's get more specific, please. Let's not talk in generalizations. That's bad when it comes to a writing task. Specific actionable steps, specifically how to use formative and summative data. How to incorporate this process so it's ongoing and used to monitor student progress. Class averages does not monitor student progress, but ongoing formative and summative assessments do. And then, of course, aligning lessons and instruction accordingly. Under instructional strategies for critical thinking, I'm going to help her increase her higher order questioning in the classroom. And I'm also going to have her focus more on a student-centered learning environment rather than the teacher just giving, the review sheet or whatever. So I want to focus on that. And then the third thing I'm going to focus on is assessment design and analysis. And in this case, I can pull in that PLC to talk about common assessment data, and then talk about item analysis. And then, of course, this all leads back to the data-driven decisions that came in the first part here that we saw a problem with. It all comes back to using instructional data to plan decisions. It's number one. It's the one thing we want to teach teachers to do and support teachers in doing. So these are my notes here. I would have quickly written those down, and then I would write the constructed response. Now, I've got this zoomed in. Make it as easy as possible. Now, I know this looks kind of big, but I did this in about, I would say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And there are probably going to be some grammatical errors, and this is available to you. Everything we use today will be available to you, so don't worry. If you're watching this in the future, you already have it. But notice I have 3 paragraphs and I had 3 actionable steps. Let me go back to my presentation here. 3 actions, 3 paragraphs. The other thing we have here is, let me just put this here so I don't have to there we go. Boom, boom. The other thing we want to talk about here is we want to justify and explain how the action will help improve. I have to do that in each paragraph. All right, so let's go here. I'm not going to read this to you, but basically what I did was, because the walkthrough data shows that there is no evidence of using data to plan lessons, the first action the school leader should take is a process for using formative and summative data to make planning and instructional decisions. Boom. I just did 2 things in that one sentence. I did one of my 3 things. I said it. I didn't beat around the bush. I didn't talk about, don't talk about other things than what you're trying to do. I'm sorry. So many people go on and on and on, and it wastes time. Just go in it. The first action the leader should take is this, because of this. And when you say the first action is because of this, you just did the action and then you justified it. And that's what I did here. Because of this, I'm doing this. Without using appropriate data to plan instruction, Ms. Slocum is not meeting student-specific needs. Again, another justification as to why we need to use formative and summative data. The teacher may need additional support and training in the area. The plan should include informal work with a peer teacher as well as formal professional learning. Now, guys, I'm a writer, and I've already been an educational leader, and I've already taken these tests. So I'm not under pressure. So, and I practice all the time. So this is a little bit easier. Practice this, practice making a concise paragraph. Then I've got a little bit more here with the plan. You could just cut it there. You've got it, support. Finally, the plan should have follow-up to monitor progress to see how she's doing and implementing this. And then I have here, by implementing these actions, Ms. Slocum will be better equipped to improve student progress. All right. So it checks all the boxes. Now that's just the first thing. I have 2 more things to talk about quickly. The second action, just state it. The second action would be this, to focus on a student-centered learning. Go back to the data again. According to the walkthrough notes, students are partially engaged and not completing all of the cooperative work. In addition, the teacher's providing a review sheet that is lacking in relevance and rigor. Buzzwords, use the buzzwords. You can't just use buzzwords and not have anything to back them up in the writing, but use the words that we talked about in the multiple choice that are good words. The plan of action should include the use of cooperative learning labs to foster critical thinking. Notice that I'm giving you specific situations here. And then rather than distributing a review sheet, the teacher can use higher order questioning. And of course, she might need some formal or informal training. Here we go. This too may require formal training and resources. And the school leader should prepare to allocate resources. You know, just telling a teacher, be more student driven. Okay, that's hard. They need training. They may not know. And then we have it here. By helping students engage in critical thinking, they are equipped with the skills to achieve, and I could have put on the benchmark test. It'd probably be better on the benchmark exams. I even get more specific there because we need specificity. It's very important in your writing that you have specificity. Notice I talked about labs and critical thinking and benchmark tests, specific things, not general things. And then finally, the third action the teacher or the leader should take in developing a plan is to support the use of the learning community, professional learning community, to analyze common assessment data and perform item analyses. Here we go again. According to the walkthrough data, Ms. Slocum uses teacher-made tests that are multiple choice. In PLCs, she can work with her peers to make them more rigorous. And then here, building reliable and valid assessments is a complex skill. She's going to need training, either by the peer teacher or others in the department, or maybe from a formal professional development. And then I've got therefore the leader should be ready to allocate funds and time. And then here we go. Regular assessment design and analysis improves teacher-made tests. Teacher-made tests are not good unless you're doing an item analysis and really thinking about the items you write. When I wrote these items for this presentation, I made sure the answer choices were aligned, that everything was there, the good words, the bad words. You got to do that when you're writing teacher-made tests. And then let me put a comma here because it needs a comma. Two independent clauses by a conjunction needs a comma conjunction. If you don't know that, I have a video on it. Okay, so look at that. It's done. Now, it took me a lot more to model this for you. But if I'm doing this and I'm practicing, it's only going to take me a few minutes. Now, remember, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be grammar, spelling issues. There's no spell check and there's no grammar. I don't believe there's spell check on the SLLA writing. I know there is not on the FEELE. So you got to get in, give yourself enough time to quickly proof. These paragraphs could be shorter. They don't have to be this long, but you need, what do you need? You need to, follow the rubric. You need to identify 3 things, not 2, not 5, 3 things. You need to justify why you're taking these actions, and you need to show how they support to improve the teacher. I hit all 3 things, over and out, done. Okay, so that is how you attack the writing, one of the writing parts. There are 4. In FEELE, there's one big one, but on the FEELE, you have a similar situation, guys. You've got a bulleted points on the FEELE right under, and it says, do this, put a professional plan in place, meet with, whatever it is, and just use that. The other thing I like to do on the writing is to use headings. I use headings in my writing. So for this, to make it even easier, I might have chosen, let's go back to, what were my 3 things? I might have done something like this. Using data to drive instruction. And if I had a bold option, which I think you do have a bold option, I would have bolded that. I would have done critical thinking in the classroom. That's not how you spell critical thinking. I'm lucky I have spell check. You won't probably when you go in. And then the final one is assessment, design, and analysis. That's how I talk myself through the. So I would do this for sure. Headings help you stay organized, and we've helped a lot of people pass the Feely writing, and we always tell them to use headings to organize it. Otherwise, guys, you go off, it's all crazy. This is professional writing. You're building a plan. Headings are totally appropriate, and they help you organize your writing. And you can see here, it's all nice and neat. Think about it. If you were the reader of this, if you were the grader, do you want a hot mess of 18 paragraphs going around and around? No, you want the person to do the task, answer the question, less is more, concise, coherent, comprehensive essays or responses are key here, okay? And I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I think this could be like a 3. You could probably get a 3 on that if you did this, okay? Of course, I did it ahead of time and had time, so I have an advantage. So that is the writing. All right, so let me stop sharing. That is the end of this particular webinar. I am going to go through a couple of things. I really have enjoyed the engagement that I've seen with you guys. This has been great. I'm so excited to be working on the SLLA. I've been really into this test and been working a lot on a program for this exam because people have been asking for it. They saw like a couple of YouTube videos and they're like, I want a course and all this. So I started writing. And so we are building a course. It's happening in June. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. But if you don't know who we are NAVA-Ed. We are a certification preparation center. We help teachers with their certification exams, and we also help leaders. And so if you know teachers who need help too, you can, if you like this, you can always send them to us. I just want to go over a couple of resources that we have coming up for the SLLA. While this was super comprehensive and many of you will be able to just look at this webinar and take the test, some of you may want more. And we have a lot of really awesome programs. So let me go to this screen here. I should be, where are you? There you are. Okay. Let's go to here. So this is our homepage. You can see we always have upcoming online events, but no, I'm on one. Let's share desktop too. Sorry about that. There we go. You should be able to see my website there. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, so this is our website. And we have so many products, and free and paid. Our YouTube channel is amazing. I highly recommend subscribing to our YouTube channel and making sure you enable notifications so you know when we post. I'm posting tons of SLLA content because I'm obsessed with this test right now. And so I want you to get all the free stuff you can get. But under school leadership, if you go to school licensure assessment, you'll see that we have, this is the webinar happening right now, but we have these webinars coming up. They are paid webinars, but they are 2 to 3 hours for each section of the exam. So it's going to be more in depth, and they're going to come with very comprehensive study guides. I'm building the book for this particular webinar. And if you're watching this really far in the future, maybe by the end of the summer, I will have summer 2020, I will have the book done. But what you're going to get in these webinars are the parts of the book that are done. And there's a lot done. I'm writing it like crazy, and it's amazing. And it's got great practice test questions and things like that. But not only are these webinars really good for the test, they're good for leadership. So if you want to, join and take a look at these, all you got to do is click here, and it shows you when and where, and it shows you exactly what we're going over and all of that. So that's an option for you there. If you know teachers who need help, we have tons of resources. We deal mainly in Florida, but we are building our national program. We have a great Praxis 2 elementary ed and an amazing Praxis core program. Our SLLA is the best already, and we haven't even finished it because I've seen what's out there, and there's not a lot out there. Now, for you Feely people, we've got a lot of Feely resources for you. We have books and online courses you can see here that'll help you with the Feely, but the SLLA ones will help you as well if you've already taken the Feely and you want more help. And then finally, let me just go to a couple of places here. Oops, sorry, I am out of the way. Let's just go and click on our YouTube thing here. Our YouTube channel is awesome. We have so many videos. You can see right now we're live there, and that's great. But we have a whole leadership playlist down here with tons of videos that we have going on. So definitely check these out. Look at the Feely ones, look at the SLLA ones. It's all good. We've got lots of different ones. Of course, like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are so happy that you were here with us today. I am thrilled to be working on SLLA with you. I am so happy that so many people from all over the country were here. And I think that's it. Unless you guys have any more questions, I'm going to sign off. First of all, I cannot believe I'm on time. It's 4:55, you guys. That's amazing because usually I don't do things on time, but we are on time. And I'm so happy to have been with you guys today. Looking to see how about if I already bought the Feeling Ava Ed book. That's awesome. If you bought the Feeling Ava Ed book, it's going to work for you. It's a great book. You will have access to this webinar afterwards. If you're watching it in the future, you already have the link, but as soon as this is done, it's going to be available on Facebook, YouTube, and you'll get all of this. Somebody's asking, how many questions do you need to pass? It's a scaled score, so there is no definitive questions, but you should be getting at least a 75 to 80% correct. So let me just do my math. 120 times 75%. You need at least 90 correct, 80 to 90 correct. It's all different depending on what state you're in. It's really hard with these Praxis and ETS exams because they do it a little bit differently than they do in Florida. So anyways, great to see you guys. I'm so excited that you were here, and I'm going to sign off now. Don't forget to study and let us know if you need anything. You can contact us at info@navaed.com or hit us up on any of our social media sites, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you so much, and have